Good evening. I'm laughing because I'm looking at two people, but thank you for coming. So we're now reconvening to open session. Before reporting out on the closed session items, I do have something to read. On behalf of the Board of Trustees, I would like to express our sadness and deepest sympathies, especially to the Drake community, for the loss of one of our young people at Drake, Senior Gabriel Hooley, to suicide right before the winter break. I would also like to extend our heartfelt condolences to the Novato community who have experienced this type of loss very recently as well. The death of a young person affects so many people, especially their family, teachers, and friends. Our thoughts are with you all. Before we begin tonight's meeting, I ask that we take a moment of silence to reflect on how we can support each other during experiences of loss such as this, and how we can move forward and personally assist the young people in our lives. So I'd like to have a moment of silence now. Thank you. To report out on the closed session items, the board approved the personnel summary, item 4A, and a copy of the summary is available on the table at the back of the room. In regards to item 5A, the board approved a confidential settlement in the amount of $50,000 for case number 2018-01. Can I have an approval of the agenda, including time limits, please? Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All
Can I suggest that we add one?
Oh, was it remove item 18.1 was in duplicate?
Yes, I think it's
With item 18J.
we'll get that when we consent.
Right, so when we get to consent, we'll remove that. No, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Do we have any public comment on the consent agenda? Anyone like to remove anything from the consent agenda tonight?
So I'll throw in, on the consent agenda, we have a duplicate item. 18I and 18J, they read slightly differently, but they are the same item. So we'll ask that the board remove 18I, just for redundancy.
Okay. Are there any other items on the consent agenda any board members would like removed for discussion? Okay, can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda with removal of item 18I?
So moved.
And a second, please?
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you. So let's move on to student trustee reports.
I'd first like to thank you for taking the moment of silence for Gabe. As I'm sure you all know, Drake lost a student at the beginning of the last week of school. This tragedy really affected everyone in the Drake community, but we did have some incredible support for it. Wellness and peer resource were both amazing during this time. They offered a lot of counseling and support for any student who needed it, and they held groups of students that they could come, any student could come and just talk with other students, and they also had one-on-one counseling, and they really helped during this time. I think everyone really appreciated having them. And we all did manage to make it through finals week, though many students found it difficult to focus on their tests. after this tragedy. But just all the hearts of the Drake community go out to Gabe's family, and we hope to move into this next semester as a community and just keeping in mind anyone that is still affected by this and trying to just support all of the students in Drake.
Thank you.
Okay. At Tamalpais, the Pathways students presented about their internship to their classmates. They talked about their experience, what the internship has taught them, and if they would like to pursue the specific career the internship was focused on. The students in the team program also did a presentation to their classmates about the community service they have been going to. At the CEC classroom, the students had a holiday party in which each student participated by representing a culture. This coming Friday, for the whole school to attend, Tamalpais is having an all-school assembly for the purpose of students to connect and build community with each other. Along with lunch and receiving our second semester class schedules, students are going to be watching California Typewriter and having a debriefing of the film with the director, actor, and sculptor. Thank you.
Thank you and welcome.
Thank you.
So I do want to, before we start with the trustee reports, the superintendent and I thought we would try something different tonight. We thought that for this first part of the agenda earlier in the evening that the trustee reports be kept to very high-level items that the fellow board members needed to hear, kind of like the nuggets and the action items, or what you gain from the work that you've done, and then anything that warrants ongoing discussion we would wrap up at the end of the meeting, and then that would also afford us time, because sometimes what we find that is that a trustee will have a very interesting topic and then we realize, well, gee, maybe that should be an agendized item. So we thought we would try that tonight. We'll see how it goes. So you'll notice on the agenda that Mary gave us 15 minutes. That's 3 minutes per trustee. We thought 3 minutes was appropriate. And so why don't we try it tonight and see how everyone likes it.
3 minutes. Where's Lars? Okay. Okay, I'm going to go fast. Golden Bell is May 24th at Dominican. Put that on your calendar. I had a bunch of stuff I was going to say because we didn't have this last time, but I'm going to skip over that. And
you can say it at the end of the meeting, Laura.
Yes.
It's really meant just to...
I know, I'm trying to be good, though. Stay within
Okay.
my time. I wanted to give the board an update on stakeholder outreach with the Whitehurst Mosher. And I did consult with Jill to make sure that she and I were in line with what the rest of the board should hear at this point. So there are three main things. Our stakeholder interviews, which all 5 of us have been doing, have been going well. We extended the deadline because it was over the holidays and people, so it's still ongoing. So we are finishing those up, and if you have any reports to share with Brooke, then please do that. Once all of the interview reports are in, I did mine, I just called Brooke and gave her a verbal synopsis of mine. Then Whitehurst Mosher will compile a report and share it with the board. The second thing that's been going on is the poll that will be sent out to the community. It has been drafted and finalized with Whitehurst Mosher and Godby. David Yoshihara and I have been working with both Whitehurst Mosher and Godby on this poll, and it will be conducted January 13th to 19th, and the results of that poll will be presented to the board at our February 6th meeting. And then our ongoing work includes creating more of a public presence and discussion, communications about the district's fiscal challenges. And those include a new section on the district site that highlights, it will have a frequently asked question page. There's already a blurb up there right now, but it's on the front page, and we will keep adding to it. I say we, it will be Whitehurst Mosher adding to it. And that op-ed piece that I sent all of you, I got good feedback from you. It's being reworked, and you will see it again. Nothing will go out without everyone giving the thumbs up. So that's it for that. Is my 3 minutes up?
Can you clarify one thing?
Yes.
Can you again say what we're seeing in the way of the poll on February 6th, I think you said? Yes.
Yes, February 6th, we will see the results of the polling.
Wow.
So the polling is happening January 13th to 19th.
So I did hear right. See,
You
I
did.
didn't think I heard right. That's great news.
Yes,
Okay,
so
good.
they are going to get the results and compile the information and then come present to the board. So we need a placeholder for that on February 6th and tell us what the polling results indicate.
Very good.
I'm done.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question? You can go into my 3 minutes. With a report of the stakeholder interviews, is that going to attribute comments to, is it going to publish the names of the people whose, comments are being published?
I
No.
do not think so. I think it's
No.
just an anonymous.
that same question.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. No,
Yeah.
no one's going to be getting in trouble with the comments that come back.
Okay. Just two things. I spent the day at TAM shadowing Leslie's son. No, I'm just kidding. But I did go to his class. I did go to his class.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I wanted somebody to do that for me, but I worry so much. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a very good visit, and spent actually quite a bit of time with in the Avid classroom, speaking with teacher, both at the what do they call on the block days where they don't have advisory, and then going back for the class. And it was really interesting to see how structured the class was, how the teacher and I guess the teachers, they had a teacher's aide and actually 3 people in the class, and how they were working with each student one at a time. What do you have? What do you have scheduled? I mean, let's go over your to-do list. It was very impressive, very deliberate, very well thought out, and and from what I understand, the results are showing as well. So anyway, that was I had a very nice visit. That was one of the highlights, without referring to the other highlights. And the other thing that I did was I attended a JV girls soccer match between TAM and Redwood out here, and I won't say who won in case you guys don't win. I'm not going to, obviously cannot root for one team over the other team, but I will give especially shout out to Audrey Hedelman, who was the daughter of one of our, who played on one of the teams, daughter of one of our teachers. So there you go.
I too have a lot that I'm going to leave off, but I want to highlight the money you paid to send me to San Diego. We worked. I hope I'm not going to repeat anything. I can't remember what I was supposed to have said, but we did work in delegate assembly, and we did the process. They used a focus group, if you will. We had breakout groups, and we went over key issues that trustees were raising. Absolutely, almost to a person, the issues around our pension liability responsibilities. There, a cap on legal fees, the special education costs, and what happened as a result of these small groups proposing these issues that we need to take forward is that A, there was tremendous consensus, B, that in the legislative assembly, that I guess we're going to go January 17th, we're going to go to Sacramento. And I think that we'll see what kind of traction we get there, what kind of information they need. I also, this may seem little, but I'm going to mention it. Let me go back. I went to pension liability. I went to a FICMAT presentation. I went to a presentation on negotiations and the impasse process. But I don't want to forget to mention that I went to a session talking about learning from our neighbors, lessons from behind bars. It's important to remember that A, They're our neighbors, and that we have a special relationship and an opportunity, I think, to take a look at who our neighbors are and what's going on over there. But certainly, very clearly, our equity initiatives in terms of intervening on students one-on-one, they echoed how powerful and important those interventions are. I did attend Drake's small learning community, where I saw the beginning of a launch for a new project. I have some details about that, but I'll share that with Tara. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I've got a long list because we didn't do it last time. But I think oh wait, where did Liz go?
I think she left.
Oh,
You have to
okay, then
truncate your
I
list
don't need
too.
to tailor it all to Drake then.
You'll have a second chance, too.
Okay.
I visited a bunch of classes at Drake and at TAM, so I think I'll start with those. One of them was the Foundations for Algebra class at Drake. So it was Judy King's class. So Judy was there. They had 2 para-educators, about 20 kids. It was understaffed. I will just say that. You know, it looks really nice, but it was understaffed. I spent a bunch of my time working with a kid. This is a freshman, did not know how to do simple subtraction, and had an attention span of somewhere between 30 seconds and a minute. And really needed someone there one-on-one for the whole period to keep them focused. So it makes me wonder, you know, how we are going to get some of these students to where they need to be next year, because this one I don't see really getting there. If you can't do 4th grade arithmetic, you've got a serious deficit. I thought Judy was fabulous, by the way. I was in Ben Varvel's engineering class, 25 boys, 1 girl. And Ben said that the groups had difficulties working with each other, looking at the gender split, that, you know, it made me think no wonder that they're having trouble working with each other. And then I went into the 3 AVID sections they have at Drake. This is interesting. They've actually been doing AVID at Drake for two years previous to this, under the table, as it were. Lorraine Ortega was an AVID teacher in Arizona before she came to California. Big believer in the program, so she was doing AVID-like activities in her academic workshop class. So some of the kids there have, you know, been doing AVID, you know, for a couple of years. The 3 teachers, Lorraine, Renee Ayala, and Dan Freeman. The classes are broken up by age group, so they were doing different things. I think what I was really impressed with was the level of what you might say metacognition, that the kids were really, you know, thinking about how they were learning, what they were learning. There was a tremendous emphasis on, you know, reflection at the end of every week, every Friday. They, you know, write about, you know, what they've done, where they've been successful, where they've fallen short. So I'm really hopeful for that program. And I'm going to visit the single sections that are at Redwood and at TAM. And the reason you only have 1 section in each of those is that they haven't been doing it under the table for a couple of years. And at TAM, and the class worth mentioning, I was in Sherilyn Scharf's econ class. It's an exercise I'd seen before called the Urban Plan, and it's run by an organization called the Urban Land Institute. These volunteers come in, and the students are given, all students have the same exercise, groups of, I think, 5, with very specific roles. They redevelop a blighted neighborhood in a fictional town, having to make all these various trade-offs. You know, the thing has to be financially doable, but it's got to meet certain community needs. And then they have a jury of 4 experienced planners come in when the students do the presentation and they ask really hard questions. Just, pin the kids to the wall. So it was, it was really impressive. Sherilyn's been doing it for 7 years. But it's one of these great things where you've got this organization in the community coming into the schools and giving some seriously constructive feedback to students for what they do. So that's my 3 minutes. I'll get the rest of it at the end.
Thank you. So for the president's report, I thought I'd use this more as an opportunity to, the former president's smiling at me in an odd way.
It's nice to be in the peanut gallery over here.
She's just, we could have a little bit of dialogue about getting organized. And last year, it was actually in December, we did it on a Saturday, and clearly we're not doing that. It's January, and I wanted to hear from you all about the idea of reconvening. At that December meeting, we did get organized last year, and we developed the goals. They were already part of the district mission statement, as I recall, but we tried to really articulate goals. And now we're in a position where, fortunately, we did a board self-evaluation last year. We have the goals, we have the LCAP, and perhaps we could have maybe it would be an hour, hour and a half at the most, just to touch upon again those goals, look at our board self-evaluation, and consider how we want to move forward this year. One example that came to mind, and this was interesting, it came up with the superintendent and I, when one of the trustees, Barbara, had expressed an interest in the pension liability and wondered if it was something to put on the agenda. And the first thought was, what would it be? And then as we got to talking, the three of us, we were on a conference call, we thought, this actually is interesting, because one of our board self-evaluations had to do with how much we get out in front of things politically and make it known in Sacramento, of what some of these impacts are, and maybe having an opportunity to even have, whether it's a part of a regular meeting or if it's an actual workshop, would that be something of interest? And so from there, as I was thinking about if we did have a time that we had kind of a planning meeting and looking at these things, there might be other topics too that we can think, gee, this year we know we have some big decisions to make. Is there anything that would help us when we know we get to those decisions that we could do now? That was just something else I was thinking we might be able to include in that meeting. And so I was just going to ask you if you could look at your calendars, and not right now, but just follow up with Mary after sometime in the next week, and see if you have any Saturdays that are reasonable for you. I think it would be similar as we did it last time. It was a couple hours. And if not, that's okay too. We could even try in February, and who knows, we might have a light agenda again, and we could do this for an hour, at the beginning of the meeting. We could just have it somewhat of a structured discussion. So that was mainly what I want to report out. And then logistics, you'll notice that Mary worked at trying to make it so we don't get stiff necks tonight. She's working again with the table. So things like that seem little, but I think we all find that it after 3 hours sitting here, it's those little things that make it easier to converse. Let's see. Those were the main things I had. So I'd be interested, actually, before I ask you to look at your calendars, I should probably ask you, are you interested in doing this? Does this make sense to you?
And I'm wondering if we could, that Saturday workshop, the governance handbook should be in there too.
Right, we could bring that. I'll write that down.
Because the board self-evaluation, we said we would incorporate that, and we should be looking at that handbook every year and make sure we're all in agreement with that.
Right, good idea. Do the rest of you agree that we should make some time? Yeah, so it'd be really nice to have it definitely before March, so sometime in the next 6 weeks. So Good, thank you. So that's all I really wanted to report out. And then we only have 2 student trustees here tonight, but we'll be reaching out to you more as we move forward, because I'm sure you have ideas as well where we that we could make things more meaningful for you, but to make sure that we're getting the feedback that you always contribute a lot, and sometimes we're not aware. There might be a time we know you could contribute more and we're not aware. So we'll probably be reaching out to you as well. So superintendent's report. Yeah.
Okay, I'll keep mine short as well in the spirit of the 3 minutes. No major updates really since our last meeting was just prior to the break. We talked briefly, Laura, about the strategists and the role of the parcel tax. Aside from the Godby research presenting on the polling results at the first meeting of February, the plan then is at the second meeting in February to have Godby and Whitehurst-Mosher, not sure about Godby, Whitehurst-Mosher present, to then allow the board ample time to discuss really the next steps pending the polling results. We anticipate that the first February meeting will mostly be just information going out, sharing with the board, and not getting into so much the what next, what do we do now sort of step. But that'll be the second meeting in February because of timelines pending a possible June/November. So that's just those are some important dates to keep in mind, the 2 February meetings. Other than that, someone briefly alluded to it. Ledge Action Day is next week on the 17th. I think it's a Wednesday. The student trustees, Fatima, you're welcome as well if you want to join or can join on that day. It's I think, a good learning experience for those who haven't done it before. The topics that I'm told that will be discussed, but not limited to, will be, as you've heard, pension liabilities, underfunded mandates as they relate to special education, construction bonds, workforce housing, and probationary teacher reform. So those are the ones that I'm aware of that are potentially topics for Ledge Action Day. On that, our next meeting will be on January 23rd, 2 meetings from today.
What does that mean, David, probationary teacher reform?
There's discussion right now. Probationary period for teachers is 2 years. There's been lots of talk of whether to change that, essentially making it longer. Bills have come in the past but have died without going too far, but there's still a lot of interest in probationary teacher reform, so the length of time of which one can be probationary. Board communicate, I'll move on. We got that. Moving on then, so only one communications, monthly enrollment comparisons dated December, it's allergic over there, December 22nd. Thank you.
Is there any public comment on any items not on the agenda? Yeah. Now's your chance, huh? Okay, why don't we move on to item 17, trustee considerations. So Tara Topier, report on goals.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome back. Just a quick report that yesterday was our first professional development or professional learning day for our staff. Yesterday was a site-based day, so it was led by the administration at each site along with their teacher leader teams. Each site had a fair amount of time dedicated to continuing the equity work that we have started doing at a deeper level in the district, and almost every site also incorporated work from Courageous Conversations. So we're excited about where that's going. There is another Courageous Conversations workshop coming up on January 22nd and 23rd. We have about 35 members of our district attending that. We have one in February, and we have 42 attending that. And we have a wait list of about 10 people.
That's great.
It's fantastic. And then the county, I believe, is adding another workshop in March. And when those days become available, we'll open that up as well.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you.
Tara, I didn't see you. Question, can we as trustees just pop in and audit on the Courageous Conversations?
Sure, if you let me know, just so I can let the presenter know so that they don't wonder who's wandering in. So, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Are these the same
It's the exact same workshop
same
being
workshop?
repeated.
Okay.
Mhm. Yeah, we are not hosting these next couple. They're hosting them at the county office. If you were here the last time, we kind of hit max capacity in this room. And so they can fill them at 80, and the county office, when that room is available, can host 80. So they're doing them January and February up in the county office.
Okay.
A couple comments. Just one is that I would encourage anybody and all of us to continue that work. I think going back, if we can get on your list, it's so profound. The shakeout from it requires time and thought and reflection. So the opportunity to come back with that, I think, is a very rich opportunity for us.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that, and I'm glad other people are going to be joining us. But, oh gosh, that thing escaped me when you first were talking about, to what extent would you say that the conversation now, as a result of some of the equity work, is getting down into how we present pedagogy? Example, when kids are, I saw in a project learning situation, comparisons of items, and kids had to yes or no it, and the items were all basically white. It was white culture, white students. When are you hearing conversations that are starting to look there, starting to question that?
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I think we feel as if we're getting to a tipping point. We really did, as an admin team, identify as sort of raising consciousness as the first step. And yesterday, I know that at multiple sites, they did start talking about how does that show up in the classroom? So what does it mean to be culturally responsive, which would be something like that? Can I evaluate my materials and say, oh, I'm looking at all of this from a white lens? So I would say those conversations are happening to varying degrees. I think they're happening in pockets, but I think they are starting to be approached in a more staff-wide way now.
And would those conversations, that elevation of rhetoric, whatever you want to call it, are we going to take note of that as a measurement of how effective this work is?
Yes. Yes, and I think part of that will also be something that our district administration team is going to be working on, and we just talked about today, was the beginning to do something called equity walkthroughs. So, where are we seeing examples of cultural responsiveness? Where are we seeing it on the walls? Where are we seeing it in language? Where are we seeing it in interaction? What are we, so the baseline is, what are we looking for? And then where are we seeing it as part of the whole sort of collective efficacy piece? Where are we seeing it so that people can have those experiences to see what it looks like and to grow our capacity that way?
Okay, one more. And at what point are we going to see that folded into, for example, the requirements for TAM teachers?
Actually, if you look at the TAM teacher document, it is in there.
It is in there. And are we holding our administrators and our teachers accountable for that piece?
The administrators, yes. And I think to be fair, the part of the work we're doing is we need to provide the training and provide the learning before I think we can provide the expectation. I think we want to make sure that make people feel supported in that work.
Okay, and all right, I said it, I was going to be my final, but my brain's still working on one more thing. There are implications for our hiring, and I know that's hard, but there are implications not only for the hiring, but for retention. And that's very complicated. So I assume that's going to be another manifestation at some point of the work that we're doing here.
Yeah, it is. And Lars and I and David are actually looking at some very concrete steps we can take.
It's actually one of my evaluation goals. There are standard modes and methods of recruiting that we engage in and will continue to because it's effective. But also looking at some alternative avenues to try and affect a more diverse candidate pool. At the end of the day, principals and teachers, they select the teachers. We have committees for school sizes, and they do that work. It's my job to provide them a diverse pool.
We're taking some very purposeful steps.
I have a follow-up question to Barbara's question, but I'm going to ask you because you're standing at the podium. Barbara mentioned a teacher document of some.
Yeah,
I am not
teacher.
Yes, what is that?
That is, it lives in the TFT District Bargaining Unit. Thank you, the contract.
Yes.
Sorry, that word escaped me. It's in the contract, and it basically sets the expectations of, the title is literally what is good teaching. And so it's based on the California teaching standards, and sort of it breaks down what we believe to be good teaching practices.
So it should be in the table of contents or the index. I don't
It is.
have that whole thing memorized, but
You don't?
I will go back and look at it.
You've got some reading to do.
It's an appendix.
It's in the very back.
I know that Barbara, look at, she knows. She's going to send this down to me like a good teacher that she is. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks.
Thank you, Tara. I think you're next with the attendance report.
I'm bringing my tissues with me.
So are we starting with the presentation and
Yeah.
then looking at the policy? Okay.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so tonight I'm going to give you, I have been giving you updates on the attendance committee. We've been in existence for a year and a half now, and tonight is a presentation of both the process and the product that we went through and we came to. So a general overview of why. Basically, attendance has been an increasing issue in the district. And as I'll speak to a little more further in the presentation, our current existing policy really only deals with what are known as unexcused absences. An unexcused absence is an absence for which a reason is not provided by the parent or guardian. And that goes down as an unexcused absence. And our previous practices were that if a student had 5 or more unexcused absences in any one class, they could lose 1 credit in that class, and their grade could be lowered by 1 whole grade. So if I had earned a C, I could be issued a D for having 5 or more unexcused absences. I'm going to get into why that policy was inequitable a little bit later on, but that's the current policy stands, but the practice has been that we do not reduce grades or credit any longer. Over the last 5 years, we've seen a rise in absences in general, and our excused absences actually outpace our unexcused. So our previous or our existing policy really wasn't addressing the attendance issue we were facing. There has also been a newfound or increased interest on the part of the state for districts to address attendance. It speaks very specifically to the climate and culture of a school and a district, and as we know, it correlates to achievement.
I'm
Yeah.
just going to jump in just for a point of clarification. So if I, as a parent, call my child in and say she's sick, but we actually go up to Tahoe for a 3-day weekend, it's an excused absence.
It is. It
Because
is.
I have lied.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a different issue.
Yeah. I'm going to get into sort of excused, unexcused, warranted, and what how we differentiate among those. So in September of 2016, we put an all-call out. We worked with the union to convene an attendance committee, and this was the final composition of the committee. We didn't have as many takers as we hoped, but it was a very productive committee, and we met, I think, 9 times over the last year and a half. So we came up with a process that we were going to use to come to consensus. We spent a lot of time reading. We looked at our current policy, we looked at our attendance data, we looked at a lot of research, a lot of which was provided by the state. The state has a lot of resources. They have an Attendance Matters website, and it's really fabulous. And then we also looked at a lot of sample policies from like districts to see what other people were doing. And we also looked at the sample policy from the state. So we kind of looked at everything and then looked at our policy. We got feedback from teachers and other people around what they wanted to see, and then we came up with a revision to our existing policy, and we also crafted a new policy to address the state requirement for a chronic absenteeism policy. We did all that, and then we went out and did a roadshow, and we presented at each of the sites. We presented the policies, we made them available to all of the teachers. They're kind of dense. I'm not sure everyone wanted to read all the policies, but we made them available. We provided the opportunity to give feedback both in writing, via a Google form, and also in person. And then we brought all of that feedback back, and we looked at it all and then made some adjustments to the policies. I will say right up front that we didn't take all of the feedback, and I'll explain why. We took it in, we didn't agree with all of it, was the end result. So what has changed? We have a new board policy in AR that is 5113.1, and that replaces our existing SARB policy. And the SARB language has been absorbed within the chronic absenteeism policy. It is now a state requirement that we have a policy that directly addresses chronic absenteeism. So this new policy will fulfill that requirement. We also updated our existing board policy for 5113, both the BP and the AR. So some of the key aspects, as you've heard me say before, that these policies define chronic absenteeism and chronic truancy. These are definitions that come from the state. We didn't create them. And that chronic absenteeism is missing when a student misses 10% or more of the school days of the school year. So if you have 180 days and you miss 18 or more days, you are considered chronically absent. That is for any reason. So in Laura's example, where she goes to Tahoe but says she's sick, the state doesn't differentiate. That counts as an absence for the state. So you rack up 18 of those, you are considered chronically absent by the state. So this is the biggest shift in policy, is that the state does not, they do distinguish for reasons of truancy, but for chronic absenteeism, they do not distinguish between a parent excusing an absence and a kid essentially cutting, if you will.
Can I just comment a little briefly on that? We worked on this starting, 7, 8 years ago with Hetty Chang. And that clearly what was driving this is the fact that our kids are underperforming, particularly in the elementary schools where this kind of level of chronic absence ends up as a pretty accurate predictor for dropouts in high school. So it was not so much as a, the state coming down with it as it was a collaboration of both people who are gathering data about it and supervisors of child welfare and attendance. So when we talk about the state, there are people there. I hope that we're developing a relationship with people, less institutions, so that it's not we're doing this because we're told.
No, and I'm sorry, I didn't mean to imply that we were doing it because we were told. I think it's very good policy and practice. And to your point, one of the things I said is there's been more research that's been made available, so we have more information than we did 5-10 years ago. We know that absenteeism rates for kindergarten are a direct predictor of dropout and success rates in 9th grade.
Did you say 8th grade or 9th grade?
9th grade.
9th grade, okay.
And 9th grade is a critical year. That's one of the highest dropout rates, and it's also one of the highest indicators of success of high school. So that we can see the thread and how attendance, and then we also know that chronic absenteeism starts to compound in lost learning, and that by the time a student gets into middle school and they've been chronically absent, they are often 2 or 3 years behind in learning. So it starts to compound as you get closer to high school.
So I have a follow-up then to my Tahoe example. So now with this new board policy in AR, do parents have to lie and say, can they just say, we're going skiing, if it doesn't matter if it's excused or unexcused?
It's it was that would be, if they called in and said, we're going to Tahoe, we'd say, thanks for letting us know that's not an excused absence. The difference there is then how it is treated by, we still treat them a little differently.
Okay.
So, and that comes into, and we'll address this a little bit later on, but whether or not the student has the opportunity to make up that work is predicated for us on whether or not that's an excused or an unexcused absence.
All right.
Okay. So as it says, that this new policy identifies attendance as the priority, rather distinguishing between an excused or an unexcused absence. It calls for early intervention, early communication. One of the things I really like about the approach from the guidelines from the state and from other places is really a partnership with parents and really a collaboration where you don't have parents not answering the phone because they don't want to get yelled at by the school, but rather the school reaching out and saying, can we talk about what the barriers are for your student attending? Can we work together to find out what would help the student be more successful in attending school so that we can know that and we can work together to create those conditions. It really is about condition setting and making sure that we are clearing as much of the deck as we can for the kid to attend. And so I really like that idea. And as it says there, research, again, shows that positive reinforcement is far more powerful than punishment. A lot of the research just comes up that punishment does not improve attendance. In fact, what it does is it decreases attendance because now the student feels even more alienated from the school culture. They want to attend less, and then they often do attend less. So it just becomes a spiral. So I just wanted to quickly go back over the definitions to make sure we're clear on what they mean. Absenteeism and truancy are different, and this is where excused and unexcused comes into play. That truant is more, a student is missing for an unverified reason. Parent hasn't excused them. This is more, if a student is cutting school. We do have our baseline chronic absenteeism data from the state. I shared this briefly with you in December, and we've got a lot of work to do, as you can see. We are higher than the county average. So Marin County's average is 9.1%. The state's is 10.8%. So you can see ours is a little higher than that. And particularly for some of our student groups, I think we really need to dig in and find out some why. Some of that conversation about reaching out to family members and community and finding out what are some of the barriers that are happening here. Why aren't kids attending? And try to see if we can alleviate. I think a lot of our equity work is speaking directly to this and sort of what Barbara was saying. How inclusive are we making our classrooms? How inclusive are our hallways? How inclusive is our cafeteria? How comfortable do kids feel in our system? And do they feel included? Do they feel heard and seen and a part of? Or are they avoiding? So those are all questions that we're really digging into this year. Someone asked if we were on par with some of our like districts, and the answer is some of them. Los Altos Mountain View has similar numbers to us. Acalanes, their numbers are a little lower. They're 8% chronic absenteeism. Los Altos Mountain View is about 11%. Some of because we are basic aid and we don't get money based on attendance, sometimes that is seen as a reason why we don't have as much attention paid. A lot of schools that are not basic aid, where they get paid based on ADA or average daily attendance, will have a specific attendance officer. And that person's job is just to track down kids and make sure they're in school. And oftentimes for an ADA district, that position will pay for itself because of the recaptured revenue. Because you lose revenue if you have based on student absenteeism in those districts. But we are also reaching out to other districts to see what they're doing. We did look at a lot of their policies. Akalani's has a policy very similar to the new one that we're putting in. We used theirs as a model. They use incentives, they use early intervention, a lot of outreach to parents, a lot of early and frequent communication around the value of attendance, making it important.
Excuse me, that's Contra Costa, isn't it?
Yes.
And they have been very active from day one.
Mhm.
And they do have these folks all organized
Yeah.
for this purpose.
Yes. So some notable changes to our existing policy. The big one is that a grade may not be reduced solely due to attendance. So what that means is if I have 10 absences in your class, whether they're excused or not, I earn a C. My grade may not be lowered to a D strictly based on my number of absences. However, if I have, because of my attendance, have not been able to make up work and have missed work and did poorly on tests and earned a D, then I earn that D. I just want to make the distinction that the idea is that I don't just lose a grade level because of the number of absences I have.
How is that, that's not a necessarily, I'm sure there were some teachers who had differing opinions about that.
Yes.
And were there concerns addressed at all?
We did do a frequently asked question document that we took their feedback. A lot of what I heard, I thought what I was hearing was that because we were no longer under chronic absenteeism, distinguishing between excused and unexcused absences, what I heard a lot of teachers hear was that they felt that meant they had to allow everyone the opportunity to make up all the work they missed, whether their absence was excused or unexcused. And so they felt that that was going to be an undue burden. So I think clarifying that, because when we had one-on-one conversations, they were like, well, I'm not looking to lower anyone's grade. So when we had one-on-one conversations, it was sort of a clarification around what the expectation of them would be. So the other change is that we will memorialize not losing credit. We no longer do this as a practice, so we're just putting that into the policy that you cannot lose credit. So, the way the previous practice and the existing policy worked is, I had more than 5 absences, I passed the class, right? Made up all the work, I did enough work to pass the class, but I lose a credit. And a 4-credit one-semester class is of no good to me. We don't have summer school anymore, we don't have a means of making that up. And we also had some issue with the fact that making that up was making up time, not making up work, because I passed the class.
Oh, yeah.
So we were basically really valuing time over learning in that scenario. Not that being there isn't valuable, it is, but in that case, it really was a mixed message. So changes to the existing AR, they just follow the policy, so it just reflects the policy. So when we went out to the sites, we gathered a lot of feedback, and then we developed a frequently asked questions form. And here were the sort of main points that came up. To Barbara's point, are teachers required to provide the opportunity to make up work to students who have unexcused absences? And the way the current policy reads and the way it continues to read is that no. If a student has an unexcused absence, the teacher is not required to allow that student to make up the missed work. They can if they wish to. It's up to the teacher to decide that. But they don't have to. And that's consistent with state ed code. Truancy has been put into the new board policy under chronic absenteeism. And then the other one that came up a lot was, how is this really going to work? Why would this suddenly make kids attend more? And I have to say, we really did lean heavily on research and practices from the state. And it seems like low-hanging fruit. Over and over again, they say, communicate. Just communicate early and often. And over again, they had stories and anecdotes and different case studies of people reaching out and saying, you know, hey, Tara, did you know that your son has 10 absences? And, you know, more than 50% of the time, the parent said, well, no, that's not right. I've only excused him like 4 or 5 times. And they're like, no, actually, there are 10 absences, and they've all been excused by you. And what they're finding is that, you know, parents don't track that, right? They're not writing down in a calendar the way we do in our, and that, you know, for them, it's like here and there, they're excusing a day, but those days add up. And so if you can front load it early and let them know on regular intervals how many absences their student has, it reduces the number of absences. And again, just making sure that we are communicating that we find their attendance valuable, that we care about them, and that we miss them when they're not in our classrooms. You know, that every student contributes to our learning community and our learning environment, and that's what makes it a rich environment. And making sure kids know that they're missed when they're not there is a big part of improving attendance.
Tara, how is it calculated when a student misses, for instance, an hour or an hour and a half to go to a dental appointment? What category would that be?
So that would be an excused absence.
But is it count any less than when it's a full day? I guess
It does, for the state purposes, it does count. The chronic absenteeism is a full day.
Okay.
So for us, we equate that to a certain number of periods.
Okay.
And then the other, you know, one of the questions that came up along this was like, why are we changing the policy from the previous one? We did have a number of people who wanted to know why we weren't going to reintroduce the loss of credit. And the research we had done, the reduction of credit was really disproportionate. It had a huge impact on our students of color, our English language learners, and our low SCS students. And it's a big equity issue. It is about language of schooling. It's about access. You know, if I have a parent who doesn't speak English, that parent has to call in to excuse me or write a letter in English to excuse me, they're far less likely to do that. You know, there are some cultures where they feel like it's not their place to challenge a system. So they're not going to advocate for a student. They may, you know, so for some of us, this is water. The system is a system. We get it. We know how it works. That's not true for everybody. It's predicated on us to make sure people understand our systems. And that includes early, frequent communication. And our previous policy really did not do that.
And is the early and frequent communication at the site level? I asked that question.
It's at the site level. I mean, I think to start off our year with a district message around attendance is good, but it's really the principal is really what research had pointed to is it's the principal communicating that, the principal setting the tone that this was important was a big factor. And now with our new Blackboard app, as we get that up and running, we will have the ability to send sort of like monthly attendance reports home to parents like, hey, you know, here's how many absences your student had this month. And just sort of those regular communications that keep parents informed.
I think that's a great idea. I know as a parent, we're supposed to read that whole parent handbook that is available to us, but it's very long and it's hard to remember everything in there. So the frequent and early communication from the principal, I think, will be very effective.
Yeah.
I hope.
Yeah.
How much more work is it going to be? I mean, these interventions take time.
They do.
And if they're effective, they take a lot of time. What are we doing to provide, typically the AP is the one who is the designee from the principal. How are we providing additional support?
Well,
or are we?
Well, right now, I think some of the things, you know, changing our to the Blackboard mass communication systems was part of the idea of how can we make communication easier and more streamlined for our principals and our administrators. And so that was one thing, like how we're really looking at ways that we can streamline communication systems so that it's not so cumbersome for them. But the truth is it's going to take some prioritization, particularly at first. It's going to take a lot of time. You know, with our chronic absenteeism numbers, it's a lot of meetings to have. It's a lot of parent conferences. You know, our hope is, and research seems to support it, that if it pans out the way it should, those should quickly start to diminish.
how are we tracking that so that we can at least get a kind of a report in case there's something, an opportunity for us to be able to, add some resources or support to this process?
Yeah, we will be tracking that in eSchool, particularly in the notes section of when, when a meeting was held, when the absences, and we're working on different ways. There are modules in eSchool we can use to trigger, information on absences. But it takes time. It takes somebody reviewing and communicating.
Right now, when a student is absent on a given day, what is the response of the school? Tomorrow, the student doesn't show up at Redwood.
Right.
What happens? Just that one absence?
If the parent has not excused that absence, if we haven't received information from the parent or guardian that student is ill or not in Tahoe, or or if it's a warranted absence, which means it's a either religious event or a school business event, then we have an automated system that sends a call home as well as an email home saying your child was absent these periods today. If these, if you excuse these absences, please contact this person at this site.
So you call and an email.
Yep.
Better than when my son was at Drake. It was just a call.
Right.
And it took me years to figure out the reason he was diving for the phone at, at 5:30 at night was to,
Yep, they do. They go out right around 5 o'clock at night.
What was going on? This is Tom McEntee at Sir Francis Drake High School, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And my son was just carrying on a conversation. And
Yes. No.
And
So
I didn't know.
we
Yeah.
do have the ability to send it as a text message also.
Can we cut off the video when Chuck was explaining how to game the system? I don't really.
Well, yeah.
the email can kind of trump that. If the parents are getting the email and the student can't intercept
And
the email.
nowadays, most people's phones are individual cell phones.
Yeah,
They're not
cell phones.
home phones. Yeah. So that was the update on the report you have, and the process that we went through, and then the updated and the new board policies are the next item. I will, with the 5113.1, it didn't really make sense to do a cross out and add in the same document because we were completely replacing it. So I just gave you the whole new policy. And if you want, I can show you the whole crossed out old policy. Mary and I talked about it. It just seemed really cumbersome to try to do a strike through and an add when it was really a wholesale change to the policy.
Tara, can I ask a question about
Sure.
one of the policies?
Of course you can.
Thank you. 5113, board policy, the first paragraph. It says it includes a sentence saying parents/guardians of students aged 6 to 18 are obligated to send their students to school, et cetera. Should it be 6 to 17?
Students who are 18 or older may provide their own excuses. We could change that to 17. Technically, we should probably say 6 to under 18, through the age of 17.
Yes, right, because, I mean, the 18 years age
Right.
is provided for on the next, it's dealt with on the
Right.
next page. It says students are 18 or older may provide their own excuses for
Sure.
absences. So they don't have to rely on their scofflaw parents like Laura. But anyway, I just thought that was,
Okay, yeah. More precise.
yeah.
Noted. Thank you.
I
And
did
it's-
have,
This is for the benefits of my colleagues, nothing Tara doesn't know. But when I was a team, in addition to being a teacher, I was the attendance clerk too. And I can say absolutely that for the kids who came from the 2-doctor families, those parents were on it. They called in proactively. For the kids whose parents, say, had only a high school education, those parents generally weren't on it, and there was no differentiation between excused or unexcused. They didn't call in for. They just didn't call in for the unexcused. And if I didn't proactively call and try to reach them to get the excuse, there simply wouldn't be one. So there's just a tremendous inequity in that. And the more educated the parents, I would say, the more dishonest they are about excusing absences.
Or entitled, maybe not dishonest.
I don't know who those people are.
It's just, the kid's
Yes.
not ready for a quiz, I'll call in sick for you.
Yeah. And I think
All the time.
to your point, Chuck, the other inequity that really became glaring was you could have a student who would lose a credit who literally had a total of 5 absences in that class, next to a student with 23 absences in that class who didn't lose a credit because every one of those 23 was excused.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's horrible. I am just curious, and I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm curious to hear from either of you if you have any thoughts on this. Does any of this surprise you, or is this common that you hear of fellow students calling in sick when they're not ready for a quiz, or were you even aware that this was an issue? I'm just curious.
I do. I would say I do have a friend who her parents let her have lots of rest days, just sort of mental health days, and I do personally think that it directly affects her schoolwork, and kind of wish her parents wouldn't let her do that, because I know even the days I am sick, it is so hard to get me to stay home because it is so hard to make up work in a timely fashion. Even if you get the same amount of days absent, it just is a lot on your plate, and I could easily see a student just falling behind, not doing the work, and then just being behind by missing like 3 days. So I think no matter why you're absent, it definitely does affect your schoolwork, and I think it's really important to be looking at all absences.
Is that information that just occurred to me? I don't know what we call it at each school, but the leadership group that orients the freshmen, there's
Link crew?
Link crew. Is that something Link crew talks to you about? The students do, they give so much advice, and I remember that. Do they talk to them about?
I think it depends on the site, but I have heard the conversation happen a lot of, when you get overwhelmed, it may seem like if I could just take a day off and catch up, then I'll feel better. But that actually compounds, because then you've missed all that work that day, and then you're further behind, and that can start to cascade. And so I know that is some of the conversation they have with freshmen around, and also I know at the freshman parent nights, attend that specifically is addressed at all the sites. No, that's not required.
My pen pushed on me.
Did you have anything to add, Fatima?
I agree, yeah. So I have friends I know people that miss days because they need to rest or they're overwhelmed, and then you just end up having more work. So,
Yeah, interesting. Thank you.
I asked you this question, Tara, and you responded, but I want it to be on camera too. So, because I'm just curious, when students turn 18, they can call in an excused absence.
They can excuse themselves, yes.
Yes, they can excuse themselves. So is there any, and you told me that we haven't been able to track any sort of correlation between an uptick in excused absences once students turn 18. I wish we could do that, because I'm curious to see if that actually happens. And if that's an equity thing too. If students who know that once they turn 18, they can call in and don't have to rely on their parents. I'm not suggesting that anyone do that, but
right. It's something. It's just a harder. It's not an easy query for us to run. I'm sure we could run it because we keep birthdays in the system. We do have some measures, and that is that, if you're continually excusing yourself, we can ask for a doctor's note. Do you know what I mean? We do have measures we can say, well, then, we need a doctor's note for that. So there are things that counter kids. And I think that also starts to be, I do think it becomes an equity issue, because my own anecdotal observation, not research, is that by the time kids are seniors, they kind of have figured out that if I miss days, I'm further behind. It's harder to miss days.
Right. It's
So,
hurting them.
Yeah, so when I taught a lot of seniors, I didn't see that. I didn't see, all of a sudden they were absent more. They were sort of more aware that if I miss this and now I've missed this and I'm further behind. It's also, it's an opportunity for us to find out why someone's checking out, if the student
Yeah,
is
why they
checking-
need more
right.
mental health days, I don't know.
Yeah.
What the underlying issues are. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Two more. The numbers for San Andreas are astronomically high, and they're honest. B, I wonder how many of our students who attend there came with very poor attendance. I mean, these are the youngsters.
A majority,
who are
yeah.
The majority. So
Mhm.
their gap to fill is much
Yeah.
more intense and much,
Yes.
their job.
And that is pretty consistent across the state. I did do a sort of sampling of continuation schools, chronic absenteeism, and most of them were between 85 and 96%. So that's not uncommon. A lot of the reason those students are in continuation high schools is that they have had attendance problems for whatever reason and have missed, they're behind in credits. So it's not surprising, I guess, and I know San Andreas is doing great work this year and really has improved their attendance quite a bit, but it's a heavy lift. It's a heavy
When are we
lift.
going to get an update? When will you come back with an update on our attendance numbers?
Now that the semester's over, Alina was out last week, but I'm hoping to run some attendance numbers in the next couple of weeks for fall semester.
Can we periodically get a routine update with those numbers? I don't know how often that should be, but
Yeah.
I'd like to see that on the agenda more regularly than we're seeing it.
Sure. Thank you.
It would be interesting to see the difference with students at San Andreas in the actual total number of absences they had at their previous school and the total number of absences they have at San Andreas. So even if they're over that, 10% mark,
Right.
they
Their
might
attendance comes
be
with
just
them.
over the 10% mark at San Andreas, whereas they were way over the 10% mark at their previous school. Having that fixed number might not credit some of the work that they're doing at San Andreas to get kids to come to school. And I think for some of those, I think I said at the last meeting, for some of those students, I think it's a miracle that they make it there 80% of the days.
Right.
Another thing I'll mention to my colleagues, particularly on days when you have student presentations and students are absent, it's really disruptive because then the teachers have to make up you have to have the students make up those presentations on other days when they had other things planned. And then you've got a gap in the day of the presentations. Really, really, really disruptive. And my sense is it has become more common.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone have anything else to add before we move on? Thank you, Tara.
Thank you. So we'll bring
Appreciate
them back for a second read and approval.
Great.
We
Thank
thank the
you.
committee, too. Thank your committee members.
I will.
For
Thank
all
you.
their hard work.
Yeah, it's very important, clearly.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lars. You're up for the architectural services.
Real quick, I'd like to compliment Dr. Topia on her presentation. I will say that with regard to parent notification, I found it most effective when my attendance clerk mistakenly programmed the automated caller for 3 a.m. rather than 6 p.m. 100% parent response the next day
I bet
with
you
regard
did.
to their students and their attendance. 3 o'clock in the morning. Yeah.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
funny.
Very, very effective. I might want to work that in there somehow. Yeah, 100% response. All right. I'm back. Interim housing phase 2. We have plans to add 4 portables to Tamalpais High School this coming summer and 4 portables at Redwood High School this summer, in addition to room conversions, 2 computer labs at Drake and 2 computer labs at Redwood High that we're turning back into regular classrooms. In order to put the portables in place, we need to employ a firm to handle the design of site preparation and such, as we did with interim housing phase 1. We bring to you a contract for PhD architects to take on that project. As you are aware, I believe, they handled the phase 1 portion of this process in exemplary fashion. We put out an RFPQ prior to the holiday recess. We had a number of responses. We have selected PhD as the firm to go forward with the project, pending your approval. So with that, I respectfully ask that you approve PhD Architects for architectural services for interim housing phase 2.
I'll just open it up for questions. I have a general question. I think when I looked at that, I was looking at strictly as an SOQ, not a contract that we were approving. So I guess in the back, is there fee proposal you're talking, or do we have a contract?
Yeah, the fee with regard to their services would be $37,000 for the work at Redwood High and $37,000 for the work at Tamalpais High School.
And then the contract itself is something separate? That
yeah, we'll bring that to you once.
Oh, okay, good. That was what I was confused. So this is the SOQ, the services. Okay, thank you.
Bring a formal contract to you.
I'll just ask this because I was going to look for it. I really I thought they had a very nice, lot of really nice material. And I'm looking at the table of contents, and I realized I didn't look at one section, and it was the references, contacts for references. Did the contacts for the references include any of the projects that they did have change orders? Because I noticed that they highlighted ones that it said no change orders, and then some of them were silent, so they clearly had change orders, which is fine. And then some said no change orders for errors and omissions. But did you just notice whether they included the references to those?
I didn't dig particularly deep on change order issues. You know, we had a couple of change orders with PhD this year at our request.
Yeah, no, I'd expect that. I just wondered because I was just curious if the references they provided you also included the projects that they noted in their SOQ that did have change orders, or was only the ones that didn't have change orders.
Right.
That's all.
Well, correct.
David O'Connor's a reference.
There we go. We did have one.
And PhD has done work for this district prior to all of our arrival here, so they've got a very positive work history with us.
And if our numbers change, the 4 at Redwood and the 4 at Tam, if they go up or down at either site, will that affect this
We
action?
believe what we're really looking at now, because we've really honed these numbers, is that we've been talking about interim housing phase 1 and phase 2. There may be a need for an interim housing phase 3, approximately a year from now, but we want to get a better feel for the numbers. The last thing I want to do is put portables in place and have them sit empty when school opens. So we feel that 4 at TAM will handle the load. We feel the 4 at Redwood, in addition to the 2 room conversions, where we're dismantling computer labs, going to portable carts with devices on those carts, as opposed to taking up classroom space with an old-fashioned computer lab. So we feel those 6 new classrooms at Redwood and the 4 new at TAM, and then the 2 room conversions at Drake will take care of our need for the coming year. Redwood's going to continue to grow, as will TAM, but Redwood more so than the others. I don't know that we'll ever have to put any portables at Drake. It doesn't appear that way. We could very likely add additional portables at TAM and additional portables at Redwood in the coming year, beyond the summer of 2018. But we feel that the 4 and 4 plus the room conversions is enough for the coming year.
Okay, thank you.
Barb?
I want to approve this, but I also want to say thank you for the efforts that all of you are making to try and reduce the room sharing issue. For some people, for some teachers, we've heard, all of us have heard, how that's really difficult for some
It
folks.
affects instruction.
It definitely
It does.
affects instruction.
Tara's been a huge help in honing these numbers. She's been an absolute
Yes.
huge help with that. And, you know, we're all working hard at this.
Yeah, you are.
So, as I say, we will likely need additional facilities, but the last thing I want to do is have you go on a site visit, 6 months from now and walk into empty rooms, So we feel the 4 and 4 is appropriate for this coming year.
Do you have any inclination as to where these 8 portables are going to go?
Absolutely. At Redwood High, they'll be adjacent to the 3 existing portables we put in this past summer. Two will be flanked by the existing ones. The other 2 will face them. We want to keep, we need to protect the HVAC systems from errant basketballs and such, so we're placing them in a way that will reduce that impact. And at TAM, they'll line up adjacent to the other ones we put in this summer in the back lot.
So the site preparation costs do you have any idea what those might look like?
Until we get the designs from PhD, I can't speak with any certainty, other than costs were 30 to 50% higher than anticipated this past year. We have to account for a 100-year floodplain on the Redwood site. Remember, we put these portables at Redwood where we thought it'd be easy, and it was, but there was still significant preparation involved, as with the TAM site, and it has to do with flooding, potential flooding. So it'll be expensive, it'll be expensive. The most expensive site prep was at Tamalpais, because those are permanent foundations down there, where they're temporary foundations at Redwood and TAM. And they were permanent foundations based on the condition of the site.
And will our phase 2 budget cover these 8 portables?
We believe the money's all, we believe there's enough encumbered to cover this phase 2 of the, remember the portables themselves, the leases aren't expensive. I hope to bring lease agreements to you on January 23rd, if not certainly February 6th, for these portables. We've already been in touch with outfits who are preparing notices for us. But it's the leasing of the building itself is not particularly expensive. It's the site preparation that drives the cost up.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? The student trustees look so enthusiastic.
I'll try to be more interesting
Please
next
don't.
time, I promise.
I know tomorrow is your first day back, and you're probably tired from getting more sleep. You know how that goes. When you catch up on your sleep, you realize how behind you were. So please, if you need to leave, please don't ever be concerned about leaving, even if tonight it's not to do homework. So do we have a motion to approve the architectural services for interim housing phase 2 PhD architects?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
I second it.
Would the 2 student trustees that are so enthusiastic like to place a preferential vote? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, trustees, all in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, members of the board, student trustees. Next item up is global rescue proposal. So like Mr. Christensen before you, pending approval, contract will follow at a subsequent meeting. This is the documents here, but basically a global service company designed to address the inherent risk of field trips, and in this particular instance, international trips. In my work with them, they've been very clear to me that they are not an insurance company. There's a lot of discussion that I had around, well, doesn't insurance cover this kind of stuff? Really what they are is what it says here, dealing with customer care and the ability to get in an emergency situation and bring, the client, in which case our students, back to a safe location. In working with them, the proposal includes bringing them back essentially to the U.S., to the home territory, in a manner that is expedient and safe and deliberate. They address things from natural disasters to political situations to other types of crises management. So you can read the stuff here. They've been in business a long time. In my conversation with them, they seem, experienced from this. Trustee Ford may have more to add to this. I know he's familiar with them as a vendor, but they are probably the largest player in this space. So it was really to address that risk factor that we have. It is one of the things I would say that we hope we never have to use, much like life insurance. While it's good to have, I hope we never need to use this. But sort of security in the back pocket. The rates, I think, are reasonable. Unfortunately, unbudgeted, meaning, we did not have this at the start of the year. So we will adjust the budget pending board approval to accommodate this. So I'm happy to answer questions. But otherwise, upon your approval, I'll bring the contract at a future meeting. Normal process, we'll vet with our attorneys, making sure it covers the normal indemnification and other clauses that we're accustomed to.
What would be the per student cost if we were to pass the costs on to the students that were traveling?
It's a per day cost. I think it's on here, $32.14, roughly per day. And then typical, $32.14 per day. They basically want to know how many student days we have international travel, and it's roughly 1,500 student days. So, if 10 kids went on a 10-day field trip, that's 100 student days. So.
Aren't they only charging us $8.70? They're giving us a tremendous...
Is that the discounted rate?
Yeah.
I didn't do the math on that. So thank you, Laura. If the math works on that, then it would be $8.70 after the discount.
So I had that question to Leslie to see if we could pass. This is not every TAM Union student is going on an international trip, and I'm wondering if for $8 a day we could pass that on to the student and recoup some of our $13,000.
It seems like we
Certainly
because
could.
we pass everything else on to them with global studies, and this is such a reasonable cost.
Yeah, I mean, yes, I'd be happy to have that conversation with Brian and our other staff. I think with the caveat that there may be a small cost because, again, some students with affordability to pay and so forth, we may need to
Right,
pick up
and
on
that's
that.
there now anyway.
Yeah.
So, so one clarifying question. So this company would cover that scenario I discussed as well, right? Like if a student broke their leg, rather than have Brian Zalian trying to talk to the doctor and
Yes.
the parents, this company would be able to advise whether they were in the right hospital and talk to the parents.
Yes.
Okay. Perfect.
Yes, in terms of medical emergency. Yes.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Any other questions?
The discount, the 73% discount we're getting, is that a 1 year? Or do you expect that to be ongoing?
I expect it to be ongoing and working with Trustee Anderson. The criteria for that was based upon our institutional designation as a school, and then also on
Travel insurance or some...
so there was another factor, but which we currently have as well. And since those aren't changing, meaning we'll still be a school, in the future, and the insurance we still carry, I would expect that, discount to continue.
Yeah, and we're not doing some of the extreme things some of their other clients are,
Yes.
Like- scaling mountains in the Himalayas.
Yeah, but their experience, I mean, they handle all of that. But we certainly go to countries that may have political risk and things like that. So we have other risk factors that could occur too. So I would ask for the board's approval if there are no further questions.
I just wanted to thank Chuck and Leslie for, and Dr. Yoshihara for pushing this one forward. It's been a topic
to.
for a while, so I'm glad it's on the agenda.
Thank you.
This has been a concern of mine for 25 years in this district.
Oh, I'm glad I could help.
That
was a joke.
Leslie says you're welcome.
That was a joke. Okay. Can I have a motion to approve the global rescue proposal?
So moved.
In a second?
I second it.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you. And we'll follow up with Brian and others with regards to how they can help.
You want to do the next item?
Yeah, we ready?
Yep.
The all-important trustee calendars. This doesn't affect our student trustees necessarily so much, but this affects meetings for the next school year. So 18-19, we traditionally begin that this time. That's why you see draft up there. For the most part, we have 2 meetings per year, with one in July, one in November, and one in December. Typically for breaks and sometimes just less business going on. There's been one change I do want to point out that's a little different in this proposal, and that's the October meeting. The 9th is a normal meeting. The 2 weeks from the 9th would normally be, what would that be, 23? So I've asked to put that 1 week later because of one meeting in November. That still keeps them relatively far apart. Because of the district's work around equity, this past year, a number of us, principals, myself, and Vice Principal Lysandra White attended the National what's it called? Courageous Conversations Summit in Detroit. And next year's date has already been announced. It'll be in Philadelphia around this. We hope to be able to continue this work around equity and hope to send a larger contingent, maybe some board members who may also be interested in continuing this work. It would conflict with an October 23rd date. Again, the dates have already been announced. And again, Dr. Topia I would assume like to go as well. So we may have some people who would miss a potential meeting on that date. So looking at October, that's the only one that's changed off your normal sort of 2-week cycle. And so, again, there's a reason for that, and we do hope that there's an understanding that we will have a number of people who may be going to the National Courageous Conversations Summit in Philadelphia, the October timeframe. On that, it's pretty straightforward. If you want time to think about it, if you're up to approve it, how do we have it listed? Let me take a look. Or discuss and approve. So. If you're ready to approve, we're happy to do that tonight. Get that out to everybody. If you want to think about it, we can bring it back next meeting. But we've already vetted it internally with our staff, making sure that it works for us.
I have a question in November. November 20th is the Tuesday before Thanksgiving. We don't have school Wednesday, Thursday, Friday that week, if I'm reading the calendar right.
Yes.
So I'm wondering about having a meeting that night.
Good point. I think we did that to separate the 30th. We could do it if it was the week before. It would be, what would that be?
The 13th.
Is that?
It's 2 weeks after October 30th.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, we could do that. When does Veterans Day fall that year?
It's the day before, the 12th is
Okay.
Veterans Day.
We had that this year, so we'd come off of Veterans Day.
I'm just thinking for,
Travel and other things.
That's right.
Yeah, that's a good point. We'd be happy to consider. I don't recall a conflict myself personally. I don't recall, except maybe just create the space. So, Mary, did you recall anything else? Was it?
He's brought on here. I'm not sure why you changed it, but yeah, you can.
Yeah, I can't remember either, unless it was just to create 3 week.
Well, election day is the 6th.
6th.
So moving it up 1 week would move it to 1 week after election day as opposed to 2 weeks after election day. I don't know that makes any
Right.
difference.
I'm just gonna pull up my calendar to see if there was something going on that I maybe didn't even realize as well.
27th would be a longer gap.
November.
And that's tough for staff, because you'd have to prepare for a meeting right after Thanksgiving.
Probably right after Thanksgiving dinner, I would sit down.
Yeah.
No,
With your pumpkin pie?
I don't see any conflict. So, and we did it this past year on the day after. So, if that works for this group too. Yes, I'm guessing it'd be November 13th.
And this is really, I mean, all these things we can change anyway with enough notice, but it's nice to have something. So should we move to approve it with the one changing the October 30th date to, the November date, November 20th to November 13th?
I
Yeah,
move
good
to
with that.
approve the 2018-19 Tam Union High School District calendar, changing November's date to November 13th.
Do we have a
With that?
second?
Second.
All those in favor? Say
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you much. I think Lars is up next. Just looking at here. Yep. Okay.
And these look like a lot, but David assured us that these were going to go fast.
With our
Had that
our
before.
newfound status as a CUPCA district of roughly a month ago, I have notified the State Controller's Office of our newfound status. And the last step in the process is to put a board policy in place that acknowledges our CUPCA status. There are no revisions or anything like that because this is brand new. We don't have an existing policy, given we have not been a CUPCA district before. So this is a first reading, and I ask that you duly consider board policy and the associated administrative regulation. Thank you.
Any questions before we go on to the next board policy?
I expect cupcakes next time you mention Cupca.
This has to do with construction contracts. In case
I can see how very excited they are. All right, we got a string of policies. We got our December updates, and so I'm trying to keep us current. We're actually just about there with all our policies. Start with the first one here, 0500. This one's on accountability. I'm not going to read them to you, so you have them if there's any particular questions. As always, I'm happy to, if you see typos and other things, feel free to, some of you let us know. We fix them. They'll come out corrected in the second read. Again, there's no action tonight, so can I just kind of move along? I want to make sure, okay. Next one is on Williams Uniform Complaints. Just as a broad question, I know some of you are curious, well, do you always need an accompanying AR with a BP, or do you always need a BP for an AR? And the answer is no. And checking with CSBA on this before, there will be instances where you'll have an administrative reg without a board policy that is behind it, and vice versa. You'll have some board policies with no admin regs. It just depends on what it is. Sometimes they're embedded in other places, and so they're aware of that because I've asked, and so there are some of this as well. So
I noted a typo. Did you get that one?
if you sent it to me, yes, I did get it, and Mary has all those, and we'll fix those. Yeah, if you sent it to me, I did get them. 3517 is the next one. Has to do with facilities inspection. Did I say that right? Yeah, 3517 is facilities inspection. It's a new admin reg, so all new.
I was surprised we didn't have something like this before.
There are a few on there that I was surprised that we didn't have. I don't have an answer for that, except we do have it now. So, yeah, there are some that are like that. 3280 is update for sale or lease of property. There have been a lot of new laws with regards to what districts can do and timelines with sale and leasing of property. So that's all been updated. In here, our old policy I see is 7 years old, so there's a couple updates on that. You want me to hang tight, Barbara, or I'm happy to work with you afterwards as well.
I'm sorry,
It's okay.
not prepared. I'm still back on AR 3100 facilities inspection.
Okay.
And I'm down on 16 and 17. Does this mean that we are going to be more attentive to these items, particularly the drainage issue, which I notice in front of the TAM Student Center?
Yeah. Mary, can you click on that for me? I don't have that in the binder.
It's not what
3517, yeah.
It's
Just so I could see.
ways, all these issues I noticed, particularly 2 years ago when we switched the back to school night, I guess it was, to January at TAM, and there were significant issues that made it unsafe
the lighting.
to walk.
That's true.
Both,
Yeah, that was
both
bad.
with the
Yeah.
lighting
And then go to the beginning on that
and
again.
with drainage issues from the gutters, from the roof, and of course the huge puddles. So, yeah. it's-
Yeah, but I want to see what the beginning language says. What is it saying at the beginning?
Last year.
During another-
Shall inspect facilities that should they maintain in good repair and minimum. He shall assess physical conditions specified on the facility tool. So PSC has a tool to be used. So yeah, I would think that yes, there may be some, fixes that we would need to do. This all stems from the Williams settlement on the facility side. So, legally we would want, I think safety-wise you would want this, right? That they're unsafe. So I think if anything, this is a good thing, and we hope that we can get those issues addressed. So we'll work with, Lars will work with David O'Connor in terms of that facility. It was called a facilities inspection tool fit at the time that I was involved in it. It may still be called the same thing. So
It's an ongoing process, and we engage in this literally week to week. If there's something specific, do me a favor.
Okay.
Talk to me, we'll address it. But at all 5 of our sites, it is literally a daily
Yeah.
task to ensure that paths of travel, the buildings themselves and so forth are appropriate for use.
yeah, definitely I would say let Lars know. They'll be on top of it. As an example, I know one day and I'm here sometimes early, some of the lights in the lots were off. And I said, it's kind of dark out there. And within a couple days, they fixed them all, and they're all working now. So sometimes it may be a simpler fix than that. But certainly, if there are things that feel unsafe, that safety-wise, we want to get those addressed pronto.
I have a question. On this page, it says
Yes.
AR 3100, and on the agenda, it's AR 3517.
That's a good catch.
Yeah, I was noticing.
We will take a look at that to make sure that's consistent with my notes. Let me go to 3100 and see what it says. 3100 is facilities inspection, right? And then we called it here that's why I didn't have a 3517. So we'll get the numbers fixed. We may have to bring this back as another first read because of that. So I'll take a look. I don't know offhand which one it technically is without going back to the computer. Okay. Barbara, okay, can we move on to the next? Okay. So sale and lease of property. I don't know if there's any questions on that. Criminal background checks is the.
Yeah, I do.
Uh-huh, go ahead.
On that. It was a little slow. Does this discussion of this first read on sale or lease of property, will it eventually lead to a discussion about the property that we have out in Fairfax, San Geronimo?
It could. I mean, if anything happens around property, it would be affected by this item. Absolutely.
We've actually discovered a second parcel out in the Polinas area somewhere, a lot, not a.
Yeah, it's a small.
Lot, very small lot. Still trying to kind of figure out exactly where it is.
We could have a retreat there. It's on district property.
Yeah, it's a lot. So yeah,
I mean, smaller.
maybe kind of rustic, but good.
I'm still trying to find it. I'm gonna go out there and look at it.
I've heard about this.
Yeah. Too.
Don't get lost, Lars.
How did you learn about this mystery parcel?
Actually, Erin Parling brought it to my attention. She found it dealing with tax rolls or something like that. Because I went out and looked at the larger tract of land that Chuck's very familiar with. Beautiful piece of property, by the way, stunning. But then I was made aware through Erin of this other, again, not land, but a lot out in the Polinas, Stinson area. That someone had bequeathed us a long time ago.
Yeah. Next one is criminal background checks. 3515.6. So this one is a little older, 15 years old. So you can see there's lots of changes in laws and so forth.
Is it any different from current district practice?
No, I mean,
Okay.
we go through DOJ clearance. Anything that comes up the least bit cloudy, I look at personally and determine whether or not we're gonna go forward with that. You'd be amazed at what shows up on those.
I think the employees are sometimes amazed at what shows up on those reports. Okay, 3515.7 is firearms on school grounds. I'm going to that one there. Okay, now, so again, this is current with law as it relates to concealed weapons and so forth. There's been a lot of discussion on a state and national level around school violence and so forth, so this just brings us up. Actually, I think this is a new policy. Introduced the policy for us to be consistent with laws around firearms on schools, especially around concealed weapons. Okay. Next one, 4140, has to do with collective bargaining, and has to do with this one was old, if I'm not mistaken. So there have been a number of changes. Yeah, 1993. So one of our older ones, 25 years now, coming on 25 years. So again, HR looking at this as well. This, again, consistent with current practice. I don't know what to add to that. It's 25 years old, just bringing it current.
Did this get run past our TFT leadership? Do we ever do that with when any of our policies?
Not typically. Again, these are designed for the board and protection of the board for, you know, like I'd be happy to share it with them that this is out there for the first, you know, maybe take an extra look. You know, aside from them seeing the agenda, I can, you know, make an effort that they, you know, take a look and see if there's something that you have a question about.
I'll take responsibility for that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'll share.
Yeah. And the next one has to do with transfers, 5117. Did I skip one? No, we're not. Okay. 5117, interdistrict transfers. So this one looks like a removal, mostly a removal. And then some new stuff towards the end. So this is one of those that Tara's talking about, can be confusing because there's a lot of removals, and then the new part is afterwards. 7 years or so. This is that one. And this is consistent with our practice. Moving us right along. Last one has to do with drugs and alcohol, 5131.6. And all the ed services related ones I run by Tara as well in her department. This is a new policy, it looks like, January. So we did not have this prior, and the background's up there. Same thing. This is with ESEA, some of the new laws around drugs and alcohol. These will all come back at the next meeting, as well as a whole slate of new ones. Mary says we have about 8 or so more. Yes, Barbara.
My question is on the section regarding enforcement and discipline.
Okay.
On this one.
Yep.
Students shall not possess, use, etc.
Okay.
Can you comment, maybe not at this time, how consistent are our enforcement practices at each school site relative to this?
Okay, so I'll read out loud, and so Tara may have some background as well. So the enforcement disciplines: the students shall not possess, use, or sell alcohol or other drugs and related paraphernalia on school grounds at school-sponsored activities. Goes on to add, superintendent shall, or designee shall clearly communicate to all students, staff, and parents, guardians, the policies, regs, and rules related to the use of alcohol and drugs. Any student found by the board to be selling a controlled substance, selling a controlled substance shall be expelled in accordance with 5144.1, which I believe came not too long ago as an update as well. Student found to have committed another drug or alcohol offense, including possession or intox, shall be referred to intervention or student assistance programs. So.
What I can say is, so Wes oversees a lot of this, and one thing that has become much more consistent in the last 2 to 3 years is bringing Wes into this, sites bring Wes into these cases. so that he's kind of our glue that makes sure that we're enforcing these policies with consistency across the sites. With that being said, it's hard, no two instances are exactly the same. Do you know what I mean? So it's, I don't want to get too into it, but you get down to some very interesting things when you're trying to figure out what's the, what implies intent to sell. Does giving it away, is that the same thing as selling it? But Wes is, and he works really closely, particularly with the assistant principals, and I would say that we have become much tighter on our consistency and enforcement of these policies.
Is the wording then, from what you just said, sell, could that be replaced by distribution?
Yes, and intent to distribute is
Intent to distribute.
right.
Isn't that a little bit more, even more precise for our purposes?
Yeah, and the truth is, for us, our bar is different from the police, and when we get to this level, we usually we have our discipline, but we turn a lot of this over to the police. So, they also, they partner with us on determining what, they have very specific guidelines that they use, so it sort of helps us set parameters as well.
How do we monitor our practice relative to one site compared to another? Do we have any?
Oh, yeah, we have to report all of this data to the state, all of our suspension, so we have to review it all.
Okay.
Yeah, and then it gets, disproportionality, all of that gets spit back at us in reports.
For a student would be shall be referred to appropriate behavioral interventions or student assistant programs. Would that refer to things like
It could be BACR.
Yeah.
It could
What
be
would that
drug
be?
and alcohol counseling. It could be, it's a number of things. It could be, usually we work with the families on that. It could be community service. It's a lot of things, but usually in those instances, it's some form of counseling that they are referred to.
Police diversion programs.
Yeah. Do you know, because I know often a disciplinary measure would be suspension. Do you know if students can ask are they still suspended as well as being referred to those?
In some cases, some of them are mandatory suspensions. The idea of, we try to keep them in school, like an in-school suspension rather than, that question really comes down to how much of a threat they pose to other students or themselves.
And then would youth court be one of those, or is that?
Yes, youth court is one of the diversion.
Okay. And do you know if Drake recommends youth court for students?
Yeah, as a district, we do, but that's a more recent thing because in the past it had a fee structure, and we weren't comfortable with the fee structure.
Good questions.
Thank you for working on these policies. How many policies do we have? Do you know?
Total?
Yeah, I mean, I
in
know
the
you've been.
It's in the hundreds. But like I said, we're just about caught up. There's a few important ones that are being worked at through committee, through all CSBA. We're just about there. So once that's all done, we thank the board for helping us and Mary for moving us along, and hopefully there'll be much fewer of these going forward. But I think it's important that these be current because it's what attorneys refer to a lot of times as well in protecting us. It says, well, what does your policy say? And if we go back, it says, well, it's 25 years old. That sometimes puts us in an awkward spot. So yes, there are hundreds of them.
Dr. Yoshihara and Mary have done the heavy lifting on it.
Show you the binder?
No, that's okay.
Barbara, you had a question?
There's been the lead with some of these sometimes it says Board of Trustees, sometimes it says governing board.
Yeah.
What's the intention for changing that to governing board?
That's one I have to check with CSBA on. That's a CSBA nomenclature, so you might know better than me. Yeah, I don't.
Well, I'll call them.
Yeah, honestly, I don't. There must be a reason for that. Yeah.
Do you and Mary just sift through and find policies that are 25 years old, or how? I know that we get periodic updates from CSBA, and that drives a lot of the policies that make it to our agenda. But do we ever do any deep diving of our own and realize that we have ancient policies out there?
I have. I believe they should all be current now. In that, for example, as you were asking questions, so if there's a BP without an AR, I will look and see if we have an AR, and if we have an AR, I will look then to see if CSBA has a corresponding AR, and if they don't, why don't they? And then update the AR at the same time that the BP updates. So I'll do things like that, and Mary has helped create sort of an overall list to make sure all the ones we've done. So I'll go back and double check, but I have in the past, because we got caught up, went back to see if there's, beyond all the ones we've done, are there some. There's a few out there that are in like the 10 to 12 year time frame, like 06 and so forth. And for those, they're a little bit trickier to update because CSBA didn't begin giving their updates to us with all sort of the reasons for what's optional, what's required until much more recent, like the last 3 or 4 years. And so if we were to update that, it gets a little trickier because I don't quite know what's required and what's optional and what laws they're bound by. So on some of those, I'm choosing to wait for CSBA to release an update so that I can bring from that all the way up to the current. So there's a few that I would say are in that 10 to 12 year time frame that are out there, but there aren't many. There's a few.
Thank you for working on this.
All right, Leslie, I think President Lundgren, I think we are
Very good, thank you.
done over here.
We're down to the very last item, which is the wrapping up, or if there was any follow-on discussion from the trustee reports, since we were trying to do the beginning a little bit more high levels. So, for instance, Laura, you said you had other things to report.
I just had, I triaged. So, like, I went to the Thanksgiving feast at San Andreas, which I really enjoyed. I went to the marijuana talk at Drake, which was sponsored by the Coalition Connection, which is a... I heard about that. That was it was a panel of people giving presentations. It was very well attended, and a takeaway was that there's a continuing misperception that marijuana is not addictive or harmful. And the panelists were talking, there was a police officer there, I can't remember his name, Hamid, I think he's from the Twin Cities. Yeah, Central Marin, and it's now legal in the state of California, so they were talking about the ramifications of that as far as students go, and it's going to be a slippery slope there. So I did that. I attended the model school meeting with Dr. Yoshihara, which he spoke about at the last meeting, but I wanted to add one thing, and that is that the 2 women that were evaluating San Andreas called it a culturally responsive school, and they were very pleased with what was going on there. So I liked those 2 words together. I thought that that's San Andreas in a nutshell. And I attended an advanced performance workshop event at Redwood, which I always enjoy. And then I got a free pizza at Tam High School on their Unity Day. So that was good. See, it wasn't much, but those are the little,
No, that's good, though.
yeah,
No, I like hearing that.
little color to my trustee job.
Anyone have anything else?
I do. Let's see, the West Marin Coalition for Healthy Youth, I'm on kind of the steering committee of it. is having a major event 2 weeks from tonight during our board meeting, but I've sent out invitations to all of the Drake admin and wellness and all the TAM district employees who live in the valley. The West Marin Coalition, it's got a difficult task because we've got 4 very distinct communities: Ballina Stinson, Tamalpais, San Geronimo Valley. Now, God, I feel like Rick Perry. What else do we have? And Point Reyes. So, unlike the coalitions here where you basically have kind of one community and a bunch of schools, we've got 4 separate communities, and we're not even talking about Nicasio. And then, Tamalpais High School, TAM High School, and Drake High School, that serves all these kids. So it's a lot of communities to draw together. So they're having these series of what they call community cafes in each of the 4 different communities and trying to come up with some overarching plan of action to, deal with the things that the coalitions in Central Marin are dealing with. I accompanied Tamascal students from the Pathways program and AP Comp classes to a lecture by Matthew Desmond, the author of Evicted, at the Norris Auditorium in San Francisco. It's, really, really engaging. Patchen Homans gets free tickets to the City Arts and Lectures events. A play at Drake that I can't remember the name. David Smith wrote it probably about 20 years ago, right after you might have seen it a few times. He used to do it every other year and hasn't done it for about 10 years, about AIDS, that he wrote, in the peak of the AIDS epidemic.
Yeah.
It was very, very moving.
Wow.
The kids were fabulous. And finally here, I had dinner recently with my first boss at team, David Alvey, who tonight is being sworn in as mayor of Kansas City.
Oh.
But in his previous day job, he had Tara's position at what you might call the De La Salle of the Midwest, Rockhurst High School in Kansas City. And all I can say is, Tara, you are light years ahead of Rockhurst High School.
Tara for president.
Talking to Dave, I just felt very good about where we are. So.
Someday she too could be mayor of Kansas.
Yeah.
I was thinking presidential.
Yeah.
Barbara, did you have anything else? I know you came with a lot of information.
I don't. I can't find my material. There was a lot. I mean, I also attended the TAM art.
Oh, I did
winter-
that too.
Yeah.
That was great.
And
Yeah.
that was
very, very nice.
Yeah, particularly for me to see one of our teachers, whom I taught, be a leader in that, co-led, organizing that. So all those kinds of things are always pretty special. I did do the San Andreas, I think the Thanksgiving feast.
Yes, you were there. You
recognizing-
were serving. You were supposed to be sitting.
I just will share here, in order to sustain my career here in this district, yes, our numbers look really good compared to everybody else, but you still have to have a part-time job to make it. And I did catering for years and years while I worked in this district, just to augment our salary. Again, no complaints there, but anyway, you never know how those things are gonna come into practice. Thanks.
No, thank you. So I think some of us, I hope I still can go to the JLAC to Sacramento next week. Maybe you'll remember what you wanted to share, maybe at the next board meeting.
Yeah,
So should we just sit and chat for a while, or? Thank you.